Romans chapter 2, verse 20. And we'll read verse 19 together with it. And art confident that thou thyself art a guide of the blind, a light of them which are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babes. You see what all that is? That's, I got to tell you, good news. You're blessed because I'm here to train you. Right? I've got good news for you, you ignorant people. I'm here and I know all things and I'll share them with you. That's the exact attitude that's being described in Romans 2. When it says, art confident that thou thyself art a guide of the blind, a light of them which are in darkness. So what you see the Jews in Romans 2, verses 17 to 20, it describes them as obviously being proud. Notice what the last part of verse 20 says, which has the form of knowledge and of the truth in the law. They have the form of knowledge and of truth in the law in the sense that the Old Testament law, it's the pattern. It's the model of the knowledge of truth. And they possessed that. They possessed the Old Testament law, which the Gentiles did not. But now we're about to notice the problem. Look at verse 21. Thou therefore, which teachest another, teachest thou not thyself? Thou that preachest a man should not steal, dost thou steal? The point that's being made in verse 21 is, did the Jews have the Old Testament law? Yes, they did. But what was the problem? They had it, and they didn't follow it. They had it, and they didn't keep it. Now, by the way, I'll just make this observation. Sometimes what will happen is what people will do is they'll preach on particular aspects of the law or particular sins that they themselves don't do, but they'll be silent about the ones that they do. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but if you listen to people for a time, that's sort of how behavior works. But notice this with me. Get James chapter 2, verse 10. James chapter 2 and verse 10. For whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all. If you're under the Old Testament law, how much of it do you have to keep? All of it. And if you break one aspect of it, guess how much you've broken? You've broken all of it. That's the basic problem with the Jews that had the Old Testament law. They had the Old Testament law, they possessed it, but they didn't keep it. Look with me at Romans chapter 2, verse 22. Thou that sayest a man should not commit adultery, dost thou commit adultery? Thou that abhorrest idols, dost thou commit sacrilege? Now, I want you to notice something. I'm going to read a couple verses together here. So I'm going to read the last part of verse 21. Thou that preachest a man should not steal, dost thou steal? Thou that sayest a man should not commit adultery, dost thou commit adultery? Thou that abhorrest idols, dost thou commit sacrilege? Based upon what we just saw, what is the meaning of sacrilege? Idolatry, right? What I want you to notice is that the Bible will often tell you how words are being used. You see that? So verse 21 says, Thou that preachest a man should not steal, dost thou steal? Steal, steal. Verse 22, Thou that sayest a man should not commit adultery, dost thou commit adultery? Adultery, adultery. You see the parallelism? Then when you get to the last part of verse 22, that thou that abhorrest idols, dost thou commit sacrilege? So you can see that sacrilege is used in the sense of idolatry. Romans 2:23, Thou that makest thy boast of the law, through breaking the law, dishonorest thou God. The Jews boasted in the law. They had God's word that was given to them, but they broke the law and therefore they dishonored God. That was the problem with the Jews throughout the Old Testament. They had the law, but they didn't keep it.